Never in my life had I ever practiced breaking a cement tile. It was the one daunting challenge awaiting me throughout my martial arts journey that I had to overcome in order to earn my first degree black belt. On a cold winter day when I was just 12, I walked up to the gray cement tile in my martial arts studio. In my head, I could already feel how unbreakable it was. But I pushed that thought away. I took a deep breath, took one look at the tile, and then I struck it with my hand. The tile shattered and crumbled right in front of me. This was the moment when I realized that success in a sport is not completely based off of physical strength. So what is success based off of then? Mental strength. The Merriam-Webster definition of mental is over relating to the mind, and strength is the quality or state of being strong. So if we put these both together, we arrive at our definition of mental strength, the quality or state of being strong relating to the mind. Now that we know the basis of what mental strength is, how do we build it up to the point that it can help us be successful in our own passions? Today, I will be sharing with you my journey with Taekwondo and how it has led me to a conclusion of 4 fundamental factors that contribute to mental strength. I attended my first international tournament in Seoul, Korea when I was 13. I had never competed outside of my studio before, so going into it, I was beyond scared. I remember sitting on the sidelines trembling in fear, waiting for my name to be called. In my head, I kept thinking, please let me have an easier opponent. Luckily, my wish came true, and I was paired against a girl who was much younger than me, and thus had less developed and precise techniques. This gave me an advantage and allowed me to place gold. Since the win came pretty easily, I did not reflect on how I could do better. I did not rewatch videos of my own performances and videos of other winners to brainstorm ways of how I could improve the next time around. Given that I was still in middle school, I thought to myself, since I earned gold, that meant I was the best, right? As I have come to realize today, this was far from the truth. Yet through this experience, I gained something extremely valuable that has helped my mental strength flourish. I started to believe in myself and my abilities to perform well. This leads me to the first factor that contributes to mental strength: confidence. I had finally ventured out of my own bubble and seen the works of different martial artists. Although I knew there were always going to be people who were better than me, I started having faith in my own capabilities, knowing that my hard work was comparable to those around the world. 2 years later, I attended a nationals tournament as a first-degree black belt. The confidence from my previous tournament carried over, and so going into it, I was not as scared. But it would be a lie to say I was not worried at all. This tournament was the national qualifiers. The results determined who would represent Team USA at the World Championships later that year. I was signed up for an event called sparring. This is where you are placed against an opponent who is roughly your size and age and given 2 minutes to essentially fight it out. The girls at the competition were all of different sizes, so we were randomly matched up. This did not follow any of the guidelines we were familiar with. I ended up being placed against a girl who was solid 5 inches taller than I was, and probably 25 pounds heavier than I was as well. I was seemingly outclassed in every physical statistic possible, and I was not prepared for it at all. Initially, I wanted to forfeit the match, because I had already qualified to be on a team through a different event. But my dad told me to go for it, because I had nothing to lose. Deep down, I knew that by putting myself in this match, I would push myself out of my comfort zone and quite possibly lead to an injury. But I decided to go for it anyways. During the match, my opponent's kicks kept coming at me. It felt like I was flying back every time she kicked me. I still remember thinking of ways to dodge her kick and go in for a strike of my own. But it was in that moment I realized that I was more worried about not getting my face beat up than I was worried about winning. This was a different mentality I had never put myself in before: surviving. With the encouragement of my coach and teammates, I fought until the very end. I ended up losing to the girl I was placed against, But this match was a turning point for me in my martial arts journey. I learned more than I had ever before. And this leads me to the second factor that contributes to mental strength: learning to adapt to uncomfortable situations. I truly believe that by putting myself in a situation where I did not know what to do or what the outcome was, forced me to be a stronger person. All these situations continue to accumulate and are now a part of my toolbox that can be easily accessed if I were to ever be in a similar situation. Now officially a member of the Team USA, I traveled to Argentina for the World Championships. We arrived in this ginormous arena and it was a full-blown competition. The stands were filled with supporters from all over the world. I was so fascinated by all the different competitors and their own unique martial arts stories. There was this one rumor going around that was ingrained in my mind. The Argentinians were fierce and had no mercy when it came to competing. After watching my own teammates compete against the Argentinians, and one even sent to the emergency room for a concussion, I quickly concluded that this was no longer a rumor. Yet I knew I had to be confident. I could not go into my match thinking that I was going to lose, because then there would be no hope. I could not go in thinking that I was going to get hurt either, because then I would fight in fear. I thought about my nationals tournament, and I knew that I would have to quickly assess the situation as soon as I started fighting to determine how I would go about it. Walking up to my first match, I was placed against, of course, an Argentinian girl. She was the epitome of what I was scared of. She even chose to not wear a helmet during the match. But I decided to implement some small goals for myself. I was not going to fall down and get called a warning on. I was going to throw at least 2 solid punches and kicks. Throughout the match, I kept thinking about how hard I had worked to earn this opportunity and how much I wanted to accomplish these goals. Let me tell you, it was extremely hard to concentrate on those goals. I felt like I was my opponent's punching bag the whole time. And the worst part was, every time I tried to counterattack, she would miraculously be able to dodge it and come right back at me with even more strikes. And this leads, luckily, I was able to stay off the ground and get a couple solid punches and kicks in before the time ran out. And this leads me to the third factor that contributes to mental strength: goal setting. Although I lost by many points to my opponent, I felt like I had won on my own terms because I accomplished all the small goals I set out for myself. The World Championships lit a fire in me, and I started training for my next tournament as soon as I got home to the studio in the US. I reflected on what made the better competitors stand out and worked to improve upon those areas. I had seen so much raw talent at the World Championships, but even more than that, I saw the hard work each and every competitor put in to get to that stage. I had my inspiration. I was going to work harder this time and redeem myself at the World Championships 2 years later. After training back at home for half a year, I registered for my next international tournament during the spring break of my freshman year. This time, it was in Amsterdam. Walking into the tournament in Amsterdam, I realized that it was definitely less daunting than the one in Argentina. But after watching my competitors practice, I knew that the competition would be fierce once again. I took the skills I had amassed from my 3 previous competitions and applied it all to this one. I used the confidence I had gained since my first tournament in Korea and the confidence gained from the improvements I had seen in my own training. I knew I could handle whatever situation thrown at me because I had experience being adaptable. And lastly, I had a goal for myself: to win. Looking back, I truly believe that this tournament was the best performance I had ever had. During the matches, I focused on myself and my abilities and techniques rather than on how good my competitor was. This leads me to the final factor that contributes to mental strength: experiences. All these experiences since my first tournament in Korea built up and pushed me to train harder. This was a culminating factor that helped me place in Amsterdam. I'd gone through so many events where I felt defeated, yet these are the ones that taught me that I would prevail if I persevered through it. This is my journey of developing mental strength through my Taekwondo experiences. These 4 factors have helped me outside of my Taekwondo studio and in my daily life as well. Now I will share with you how they have helped me and could possibly help you. If you're like me, you might be scrolling through social media feeling bad about yourself because it seems like everyone these days are either on the beach in Hawaii or in Tahoe skiing. But however, it is important to remember that social media is just the highlight reels of one's life. I know it is hard to be confident in ourselves, but if we feel secure about ourselves beforehand, it will prevent us from feeling inequivalent to others. We are living in an uncomfortable situation right now, the pandemic. We must find ways to deal with it and make the best out of what we are given with. Learning to be flexible at an early age can help us in the future when we are faced with even more uncomfortable situations. And remember, if you're ever struggling, you are not alone. There are people around you that can help and support you, such as your family, friends, teachers, and counselors at school. As students, we are often bombarded with a lot of tests that we need to study for. I know it can be extremely hard to score high every single time. I know I feel defeated whenever a bad score comes back. But by implementing small goals that are achievable, such as a target grade, they make me feel more accomplished and encouraged to work harder the next time around. Now lastly, and arguably most importantly, experiences. As teenagers, we often make a variety of mistakes. But that's the perk of being a teenager, because we can make all these mistakes without having to face real-life consequences just yet. Through these mistakes, we learn to make better decisions and grow stronger and wiser. After this talk, I hope you start focusing on the bright side of situations that may leave you feeling let down, and celebrate the small victories you do achieve. By applying these 4 factors to whatever you're going through in this moment, they can hopefully make you a mentally stronger and more successful person. Thank you.